hosting and give it over to Mary, because Mary needs to share her screen in a fairly dynamic way as she gets into her presentation. So Mary, I've made you the co-host now, so you can, when you get to that point, you'll be able to share your screen and with the video and so on as well. So I'll just give a bit of an introduction to Mary, who I just met online. Of course, that's how we meet people these days, isn't it? Mary's presentation, as you've seen, is SIVUQAQ, Alive on the Edge of the Bering Sea, Shoreline Habitats on St. Lawrence Island, Alaska. And I thought to myself when I first saw that, I thought, Alaska, I've been to Alaska, I've paddled in Alaska. And so I looked up, where's St. Lawrence Island? Well, it's nowhere in Alaska that I've been. In Southeast Alaska, where some of us have been paddling, wonderful place to paddle, you are nowhere near St. Lawrence Island, which is much further up beyond the Panhandle, out in the middle of the Bering Sea. I mean, really a long way away. So that was interesting, and I think the presentation will focus on it. And I won't mention things that Mary will go over anyway here in this bit of an introduction, but I did want to say, and I know that she will also feature this, that we're going to have a presentation on St. Lawrence Island and the Yp'ik people who live there. But in addition, you're going to see some technology which Mary and her partner have been developing and have been using for, I think, 20 plus years, which is amazing. And so what they have done has been to record at low tide the shoreline of British Columbia, literally, and Alaska. I mean, there's a few places that haven't been quite covered yet, but these are incredibly long stretches of shoreline. And you can go online now, and I think we will hear about it. And I will also make sure that you get the links. You have to play with it a bit, as I have been, but you can actually go on and call up a video and fly along with Mary over some shoreline somewhere and see what it looks like at a low tide. I mean, that's amazing, and you can do it. So part of the presentation will be seeing the shoreline of St. Lawrence, but Mary will also mention how this technology works and how you can use it as kayakers who might want to go to a place that you haven't visited and might be actually kind of hard to visit. So I won't say any more, except that I came away from my conversation with Mary Morris thinking, I've had a pretty good career. I really did enjoy my work and all, but nobody ever really offered me the chance to fly around and take video of shoreline. I mean, what an amazing job that is. And she's been doing it for decades. So without any more ado, Mary Morris, and talking about St. Lawrence Island. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, thank you for the very kind intro. I'll see if I can, let's see here. We got advanced screen share. Oh, it doesn't seem to be allowing me a screen share here. Let me just do something different here. I've got advanced screen sharing options. Let's try this. There we go. And share sound. Okay.
All right, you started.
Very good. So you can see my title slide, I hope.
Yes.
Okay. And one moment. There. Phew. Well, if I, besides working for Archipelago Marine doing coastal surveys, I also work with Maple Leaf Adventures as one of the naturalists on board. And sometimes when I come into the beach with a group, the first thing I like to do is call a group hug. I don't know about you guys, but I think I could use a group hug right now. Anyway, I want to talk about St. Lawrence Island, and as Alan already hinted, I'll work in a little bit of the other parts of the story. And really, this is a reflection of the time that we spent on St. Lawrence Island doing our survey, which was in in the middle of the summer in July 2013. So incredibly, it was 7 years ago. And there's no way, I want to start off by dedicating to the people that were part of the team that supported us at St. Lawrence Island. And although Alan kind of hinted that me and my partner have been responsible for all the flying, in fact, the Shore Zone team is a group of dozens of partners, and probably hundreds of people have worked on this over the years. And St. Lawrence Island survey was, we were supported by the folks from Bering Air, as well as the people in the local communities, Coastal and Ocean Resources and Archipelago Marine Research. There was another crew working on coastal surveys there from Alaska Department of Natural Resources. We also worked with NUCA Research. And this is just an overview of SIVUQAQ as we're coming in to the airport area. It's always good to start with maps. I expect you guys are really into maps, and I wanted to include this screenshot from Google Earth just to show you. Now, are you able to see where my cursor is here?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so St. Lawrence Island is just south of Bering Strait, and this skinny little Bering, the former Bering land bridge, this is the connection between the Pacific Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. So it's a very, very dynamic place. And I have another, let's see here. And just a bit of a map to show you where St. Lawrence Island is down at the bottom here, very close to the international date line. And it's actually, this is St. Lawrence Island here with only two permanent settlements, Gamble on the northwest corner and SIVUQAQ kind of midway along the north side. The island is quite small. It's less than half the size of Vancouver Island, and it's actually closer to Siberia than it is to the rest of North America and Alaska. It's the latitude of SIVUQAQ is about 63 degrees north, so it's in the Arctic. We got there from Nome, Alaska, which is on the coastline just across over here. It took us about an hour to fly there on a small commercial flight. And zooming in again on the Google Earth image, just to show you that more than half of the landscape in the summertime is water, and it's very low and flat and marshy. There's a few areas like where SIVUQAQ is here, and on the west end and on the east end that are quite rocky and mountainous. There's no real roads. There's a population there of the Yp'ik people of about 1,500 now, split between the two communities. And this map shows where the airport or the landing strips are, and that's where we had fuel for our aircraft. And I also wanted to highlight Punic Island off the southeast corner here. Punic Island is the best walrus hunting in the Bering Sea. And I'll talk a little bit more about walrus hunting in a minute. And just to zoom in on the topographic map, SIVUQAQ is right at the top here. And just to show you that all along the coast, there's lots of places that have names. And these are all the remote camps and the old traditional sites all along the coastline. And you can see it's quite mountainous due south of SIVUQAQ here with these funny little pimple-shaped concentric lines of showing the topography. These are little cone-shaped peaks, and I'll show you some pictures of those as we flew by. And I wanted to just take you right to SIVUQAQ so you could get kind of a feeling of the place. We arrived by air, as does pretty much everything else there. There's regular flights. You can see at the top of this picture, that's the little airstrip there. This is basically the whole town, the big school over in the background, and the village site. There's no hotels or anything, so we had arranged to stay in a local housing, which was like a teacherage right next door to the city town hall. This is the front porch of the town hall. There was a town meeting going on and everyone comes with the ATVs and just parks haphazardly. Not many big trucks, not many full-sized vehicles there. Another view looking to the north along the main street. So we were right in the middle of town, and we were greeted by Myron, the mayor, and he said, you can expect to have lots of visitors while you're here, and welcome. Do you have everything you need? And oh, here's a big fresh piece of halibut for you for your dinner. There was a halibut fishery going on. It's one of the few cash businesses that the local people have. They fish offshore and sell the halibut. So the first thing we did was go right over to the beach, and we arrived. It was still daylight on almost midnight, and we just wanted to kind of get the lay of the land. And there's lots of these old frames of the traditional boats up on racks like this. In the old days, they were made with walrus skin, and I think this one's canvas, but they've been completely replaced by the modern equivalent, are these, this is the odd one that was on a trailer. Most of them were not on trailer. And here's the main beach in SIVUQAQ with the guys coming in from fishing. And you can see in the background and here, the boats are just big enough to be, just big enough, not too big to be manhandled and slid up the beach, because there's no docks or anything. And you can imagine this is the summertime when there's no ice, but most of the year there would be ice, all shore fast ice here. SIVUQAQ and St. Lawrence Island is considered the walrus capital of the world. And I thought this was this sign says a lot. It's on the part of the water and sewer plant with the traditional names and the memorial. And it just shows how important it is for just keeping the basic necessities. It's really a collision of modern communities and traditional ways of living. So I can't imagine how they keep water running and toilets flushing. And they were always tinkering with these overland utilidors. They were sadly usually leaking. Anyway, it's quite, it's really life on the edge and a collision of the old ways and modern life. Whaling is still actively done traditionally from St. Lawrence Island. And here's John looking at a bowhead whale skull from the back. You can see John's about 6 feet tall, so you can see these are enormous skulls, and they make up about a third of the length of the whale. And here's some of the baleen from this. So this is the top jawbone. It's very narrow. They're like North Atlantic right whales and North Pacific right whales. They have the same kind of shape of the head. And over at the boat launch is where they bring the whales up that they get in. Actually, they're whaling right now. And I just read online that they have, Gamble has taken at least one bowhead. They're allowed to take 2 or 3 a season, or some bigger years a while ago, they were getting up to 8 whales a year. But anyway, this is a big piece of baleen. The baleen is from the top jaw of the whale. This end is where it was attached, and the rest of it hangs down. You can see how long they are. They're over 4 meters long, and bowhead baleen is black. You can always tell that it's from a bowhead. And this is traditional whale bone. It's like your fingernail. It's made of keratin. And population of bowheads is about 20,000, and the population are increasing. It's spread out in different, did I say populations? The total population is about 20. There are different populations across the Arctic. Some are listed as threatened, but the ones in the Bering Sea are healthy and increasing in numbers. This is a whale carcass from a previous year. After they've been butchered on shore, they do tow the carcasses offshore, but they're so oily they float and come back on shore when there's prevailing wind. And there's some Arctic glaucous gulls and some other types of gulls we don't have here. And I found these great maps of sea ice on the Sea Ice for Walrus Facebook page. And I just wanted to show you, these are from this month. This was from a couple weeks ago, April 8th. And this one was taken just a few days ago. And you can see St. Lawrence Island here. This is back to the April 8th. There's all the camps along the shore, and the darker area is open water. So that's a Polinia to the south of St. Lawrence. And you can imagine the prevailing currents and winds coming down through the Bering Strait and piling the ice up on the north shore and making it open on the south shore. And you can see the difference now a couple of weeks has made. This is much more broken up ice. And in fact, that's all of the marine mammals that are associated with the ice edge. They depend on having open water to breathe. So this is the season that's bringing the walruses in close to shore and bringing the whales in close to shore. I read, let's see here, there's like a huge number of walruses go by St. Lawrence Island every year. So how did I end up in SIVUQAQ in July 2013? And it's all because I started working with John Harper here more than 20 years ago in Haida Gwaii. And we started, he'd been working on a classification system for Shoreline that was, John is a coastal geomorphologist, so he was interested in shoreline types and the physical features of shoreline. He had a project for Parks Canada. When Guayhanas was being established, they said they wanted to attach biological attributes to his physical classification, and that the biological classification system for shore zone became my life's work. And we've flown a lot of shoreline together, me and John. And St. Lawrence Island was the last project that we flew together. And so just a little bit more about what shore zone is. So it's not only an imaging system, we collect low tide aerial imagery, both video and still pictures. And then we take those back to the office and have a classification system to describe the coastal habitats. And all these data are available online. And the map on the right here shows you the extent of shore zone imagery and classification all the way from the California border, she said breezily, all the way to the Arctic and the Canadian Arctic border with Alaska. It's an enormous data set. And anyway, what I'm going to talk about mostly tonight is the imagery part of things, because that's what we were collecting at St. Lawrence Island. But just to give you a little hint what the classification looks like. So this is St. Lawrence Island. And after it's been mapped, here is the extent of salt marsh and sedges in the biobands, which is the way we describe the assemblages of biota that we observe from the aerial imagery. And you can see that a large part of the shoreline is marshes. And wave exposure is a very important attribute to understand in coastal habitats. And St. Lawrence Island's got it all, from the highest wave energy to the lowest in some of the sheltered lagoons. And you'll see some pictures of what that looks like. So back to our survey, a lot of planning goes into any shoreline survey. It's very important. You must always have fuel for the aircraft. You want to maximize the amount of time you're flying during low tide. And you plan it systematically so that you are being very efficient. We literally plan our surveys to the minute. So best laid plans was to go along the shoreline, and this is what we ended up flying. The blue lines our track lines back and forth from SIVUQAQ and crisscrossing across the lowlands. We shared the helicopter with another crew. This is the aircraft that we used was a little tiny Robinson. And on the imagery that was posted to advertise my talk, that was us with what we usually flew was a Jet Ranger. So the Robinson turned out to be the most efficient, versatile, and economical aircraft that we could use for our Arctic surveys because of the support from Bering Air, which is in Nome. And that's our pilot on the right there. Corey came over. He carried a life raft and had special survival suit to go that far over water. It's just generally not done. And that's why we're all wearing exposure suits. Plus we fly with the doors off, so it tends to be kind of cold. I sit in the front seat, shoot still pictures, and the videographer, that's John on closest to the helicopter there, he shoots video. And we always shoot out the left-hand side of the aircraft and fly slow speed and low elevation. So after all that planning, we're finally ready to take off. So this is from July 20th or so was our survey day number 1. Oh, and the other reason that we got the aircraft to the island was we could share the cost of it with those other crews that happened to be working on other surveys. So we had lots of logistics with sharing aircraft time with the other crews, as well as working around all the weather constraints. So I made a few notes. We're finally taking off here, and I'll just read you a little bit from some of my flight logs. So we revised the plans several times. After lunch, we took off to the east from SIVUQAQ, fog permitting. We follow the coast a bit before cutting across south, past the cinder cones and incredible patterns and colors, and even some black lava flows. There were strong headwinds around the cones around those mountains. And we went on to the lagoons. There was lagoons within lagoons. We noticed that there was beige sand, some rocky boulders. We completed about 1/3 of the west side of Maknik. Were pushed off by fog, nipped back across the lowlands to Sepinic Lagoon, working towards fuel at the Northeast Cape. And despite the strong headwinds, we worked back towards SIVUQAQ. And we noticed differences in the lagoons. Some were really shallow and turbid, and some rooted vegetation, areas of algal drift, incredible barrier beaches, and columnar basalt cliffs at the waterline with nesting seabirds. There was zillions of birds here. You could see them from a distance. Strong downdrafts. We were being blown offshore. There was an amazing triple sea arch offshore, Stolby Rocks. This is also covered with nesting murres and kittiwakes. And continuing on towards SIVUQAQ, where we had been turned back by fog. And you can see where people are travel along the beaches on the ATVs. This classic recurve spit building, and the camps along the shoreline with the lagoons behind. You can see this one's a bit foggy. This is another feature shape that we see all over the coast when the conditions are right. It's a recurve spit. Here, there's snow still persisting along where it's blown over. I think one of the impressions I had from St. Lawrence Island is it's windy a lot. And we saw lots of these old habitation sites. That's where this green is, with modern little cabins around it. So there were about 15 winter villages at the time of first contact with whalers and traders in the 1800s. And people have lived on St. Lawrence Island for a few thousand years. Not like our coast, where we have continuous habitation for over 7,000 years at some sites. And archaeological history of even longer habitation on our coast. And they are marine mammal hunting specialists. And you can see that this site here, it's all pockmarked and dug. And that's because the people today have dug up artifacts and objects from old sites and sold them for money. And it's hard for a white person to talk about this. So the Yupik people actually own the land, the land settlement. They have title to St. Lawrence Island. The people are Siberian Yp'ik. They're archaeologically distinct from the other Yupik people and other people in Alaska. And you can see they still use their old villages. The old sites are still used for camps and so on today. But let me go on to, I'll just give you a quick tour of Shore Zone in Alaska. So Alan mentioned we have a website. This is the NOAA website, and everything that's in red here has been flown, and almost all of that's also been classified. So to find this website, you can search NOAA Shore Zone or just shorezone.org. I'll show you that again, and it'll take you to this site. This is the head page. We're going to zoom right into Shore Zone website here, fly the coastline here. But I just wanted to show you there's all protocols and beautiful photographic books and a bunch of other resources on this site as well. So when you go to the front page here, and I didn't press my timer, so I think the easiest thing for me to do is to show you the little clip that I recorded instead of running the site hot. I'll go back here. So you'll get to this site, press start. It'll take you to that map of Alaska, and you can zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. And I'll just press play on this little video clip. And what you're seeing here is the shoreline of St. Lawrence Island here. SIVUQAQ is about here. We're flying from this direction, looking over towards the shore here. There's a little bit of crazy cursor here because it's recorded on my little clip here. So right now we're way over here. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. And so now the blue line here is our track line, and there's different colored dots for the still imagery and for the video imagery. The video is playing at the top, and it's matched to the still imagery down below here. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit more. And we're just coming up to SIVUQAQ. There's the whale carcasses along the beach and the old boats up on racks. You can see in the still images, there's the boat launching beach where we saw the boat on the trailer, looking across at the town. And you can see where you are from where the little camera icon is moving along the coastline here. So like Alan said, the most fun is to just spend a bit of time clicking around. And what I did here was just zoom in on one tiny little fraction. There's about 100,000 kilometers more that you can play with. Yeah, and I can show you how to find the BC imagery too. So during the ice-free time, this is when the supplies come in. So here's the crew accepting the annual delivery of fuel coming in from a floating line from the offshore barge, just hooking up to this stanchion. This was right in front of town. I thought, oh my goodness, it looks a bit sketchy. And then later that day, it was quite a beautiful hot day. We were taking off, trying to go flying. And we saw this slick and we thought, oh my gosh, there's been a spill. But in fact, this is one of the whale carcasses melting and streaming off in the wind. We didn't get very far that day. We had to come back. So we stayed in the accommodation right beside the city hall, but the other crews were staying over at the school. And so some of the people just slept on the floor in the library, and there's lots of room to spread out. There was internet access there. And I spent a bit of time looking around at the library. There was a whole section for traditional knowledge and this amazing Yupik dictionary. So Siberian Yp'ik dialect is distinct from the mainland Alaska Yupik dialect, but they have many, many words for sea ice, different kinds of sea ice. And here's the teams using the home ec room for cooking and for doing their data compilations. And in the background, here's this is Derek. He was the expediter for Bering Air and also helping the other crew out with their on-ground transportation. And he offered to give us a taste of bowhead whale. So here he is with some frozen bowhead that he brought to the home ec room. He was cutting it up. That's the black part of it is the skin of the whale, and the pink is the fat. You can see it's pink because bowheads eat zooplankton, just like salmon. Their fat gets pink from eating euphausids. We were grounded by weather and by sharing helicopter time with the other crew, and it coincided with a visit from a pocket cruiser. And there's the ship just offshore, and the guests were coming ashore for a special tour of SIVUQAQ, and it was quite intriguing watching these guys landing in the surf, just like some of my friends that do guiding. I think Mike Jackson's probably pretty familiar with this way of approaching Shoreline. I thought it was great. Everybody all in their parkas and everything, and the little girls down there with their pants rolled up waiting. But you can see it's pretty windy offshore. So I was able, because we couldn't fly, I went up to the school to see some of the dance performances. So this is what the people were practicing at the city hall when we came in the first night. So the ladies there and the men behind with the walrus hide drums. There was Eskimo games, the high kick. These are traditional competitive sports. That's a young woman doing a one-handed high kick there. And this is the lead of the dance troupe was doing a two-footed higher kick. And I just thought the intent looks on all these guys' faces was pretty amazing. And then they did a dance performance, and I have a little video here that I want to play for you. Pretty cool, eh? I think that was the walrus. It was a walrus dance. Always the men do the dancing, and they have special ceremonial gloves they put on. Anyway, very cool. And also, I wanted to show you this picture of Frank Sapella here coming along, carrying this giant piece of baleen. This lady had just come in on the plane, and he was coming over to meet the plane and see if she wanted to buy this piece of baleen from him, just to show you how huge they are. They do the local carvers actually also are known for their walrus carving. There was a lot of people set up at the school to sell walrus, the carvings to the visitors. I didn't take any pictures of those, but just incredible, huge sculptures of walrus ivory. The other incredible thing about St. Lawrence Island and SIVUQAQ is the seabird colonies. This is right beside the boat launch Whale Beach, and I could walk over there from town, and there clouds and clouds and clouds of auklets, and this 4 of the top 20 biggest seabird colonies in Alaska are on St. Lawrence Island. This colony near SIVUQAQ has, together with the adjacent ones, there's over a million birds in these 2 colonies, and there's over 3 million seabirds nesting on St. Lawrence Island, which is pretty incredible considering the total area of the island. These are least auklets. They're very tiny. I'd never even heard of them before, but they're the most abundant seabird. They're smaller than murrelets, and they only come ashore when they're breeding. And here they are, the least auklets with the crested auklets. Those are the ones with the orange bills. And they are just in this scree tumbled slope and kind of on the approach to the airport. So whenever a plane came in, which was often, they would take off and wheel around. There was flowers. They reminded me of alpine flowers. These are on the tundra because it was mid-July. The season was just getting over. That's on the left, pedicularis, and a little saxifrage at the top right, and a monk's hood at the bottom. And of course, I'm really interested in the seaweed, so I had to whip over to the beach and see. These are some species, the same species as we have here in BC, but only on rocky places where there was attachment. And it was hard to get to see much seaweed when we were in SIVUQAQ. We were in the curious position of being, our travel was on foot in town or by helicopter and nothing in between. So it was crazy. We got to see a lot of remote places as we flew by. Now, I just wanted to finish off the last day that we were flying was a big day. We did, like, most of our flying was done in this one day. So I wanted to show you what Gamble, the town of Gamble, looks like. So we're coming into Gamble here, which is on the northwest corner of the island. And you see the morphology of the town is very flat. It's like a big barrier washover beach form. And all the boats are just big enough to be seaworthy and just, small enough to be still allowed. You could still pull them onto shore. Gamble was an old site too. This was historically the largest settlement on the island. You can see the old part of town there, and looking back towards the airport. You can actually go and look at webcam. Today it's still quite snowy in SIVUQAQ and Gamble. And going down the west side of the island, it's more rugged. Still lots of camps and lagoons and barrier beaches there. And this is the biggest seabird colony on the island. We're down at the southwest Cape now. And I've forgotten how high this is, but it goes straight up into the clouds. It was also very windy when we were going by there, and we were getting further and further offshore because there were literally millions of auklets raining out of the clouds above us. It was crazy. So didn't want to be too close to that because they would be coming right in the door. And these are the big lagoons on this all along the south shore of the island. You can see how windy it was. John knew about the St. Lawrence Island because it was the type locality. It is the type locality for cuspate spits, which is this feature that builds up in lagoons that are high energy barrier beaches. He did his thesis in Nantucket, which has exactly these same shaped features. And here's the very one that was described in that 1950 paper that he cited in his thesis research. So he was pretty excited to see this. But you can see this is a good example of high energy facing to the open ocean to the south. This is the closest I got to big piles of seaweed, was all this drift. So that's a sure sign that there's lots of exciting seaweed offshore. And you can see where people have run the ATVs along the beach. And another unexpected sighting at St. Lawrence Island were these big herds of reindeer. These are introduced to the islands after the whalers were there. The population went through a terrible famine. The majority, almost, let's see here, many people died. The population was severely reduced in a 2-year famine in the late 1800s. So reindeer were introduced to the island about 1900, and this is a bunch of reindeer up on the snow patch, probably trying to get some relief from all the bugs, the mosquitoes. And this pair of reindeer was trotting along the beach, and the Coastal and Oceans Christmas calendar, they set up Santa's sleigh behind here, and it was just too perfect. So these are reindeer. They look like caribou, but they are domesticated animals that are feral, and they are hunted for meat by the people from SIVUQAQ. And in fact, SIVUQAQ was established at that site because it was closer for the reindeer hunting and herding. And all along the south, these are incredibly long, huge lagoons. There's the open ocean, like Long Beach, to the left, and then ultra sheltered lagoons to the inside.
Mary, somebody was asking, what are the tides like around St. Lawrence Island?
They're about about a meter difference in high and low tide, unlike here and in places on the north coast of BC and in some places in Southeast Alaska where there's up 4 or 5 meters difference. Mm-hmm. So yeah, not as much difference in the tide. So just to end off, these are, it's been a really interesting exercise for me, going back and reminiscing about this one short week of all the places that I've flown and seen. SIVUQAQ really, the more I thought about it and looked at the photos and looked at my old notes and looked things up online, the more I realized how important this experience has been. And the people that we met in SIVUQAQ were so gracious and welcoming and offering food and checking in on us and always curious about what we were doing. Incredible sense of community. And now knowing what people have gone through there to survive, the only way people can live on SIVUQAQ is to work together and live as community and support each other. And I've never seen so many seabirds in one place at one time. I'm a birder and a naturalist, and it was just incredible to see clouds and clouds of these very exotic and rare seabirds. Such a strong sense of place, and the landscape, the coastal landscape, is just so unique and crazy and compact. And yeah, I love islands. And I wanted to just close with a poem. And I have been known to choke up, so we'll see if I can get through this one. And this is a poem called Tides. It's by Mary Oliver, and I don't know if you can see this. It's from this compilation of Mary Oliver. It's 1,000 Mornings, a collection of poems from Mary Oliver, who she lived at Cape Cod. She just passed away a couple years ago. She lived at Cape Cod, which is not far from Nantucket, so she probably saw cuspate spits herself. Okay, Tides by Mary Oliver. Every day, the sea, blue, gray, green, lavender, pulls away, leaving the harbors dark, cobbled undercoat. Slick and rutted and worm riddled, the gulls walk there among old whale bones. The white spines of fish blink from the strandy stew as the hours tick over. And then far out the faint sheer line turns, rustling over the slack, the outer bars, over the green furred flats, over the clam beds, slippery logs, barnacle studded stones, dragging the shining sheets forward, deepening, pushing, wreathing together wave and seaweed, their piled curvatures, spilling over themselves, lapping, blue, gray, green, lavender, never resting, not ever, but fashioning shore, continent, everything. And there you may find me on almost any morning, walking along the shore, so light-footed, so casual. So thank you, everybody.
Oh, thank you, Mary. I have a feeling that you identify with that poem very closely. That was fantastic. So are you willing to take some questions if there are some?
Of course, I'd be delighted.
Okay.
I'll
Anybody want to know more?
There we go.
I have a question, which is, there's an island in our area, Savory.
Yeah.
And it's, Fred Picholsky pointed this out. It sits differently than any of the other islands because it's like east-west orientation. It's very sandy and so on. And I got the impression looking at St. Lawrence Island that something the same was going on there from a how it developed point of view. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it seemed to be oriented east-west.
Coastal geomorphology, this is a question for John, but St. Lawrence Island is a part of, it's a remnant from the Bering land bridge. You know, at former lower sea level, Siberia and Alaska were connected. But there's fairly recent volcanism, but there's also other older rocks that are part of St. Lawrence Island. So it's probably a remnant because of the other underlying bedrocks that are kind of an anchor for it. And Savory Island is a glacial outwash. It's a terminal moraine of some kind. Yeah. But
okay.
You need
so different.
you need a coastal geomorphologist to explain that for you.
I'm really curious about the bow whales and what it sounds like the blubber, they eat the meat as well.
Yes, the boat and their bowhead whales. So I did have you guys want to see another really cool thing? I'll show you this. Yeah. Can you see the screen? Oh, sorry.
Not yet.
Sorry. Here we go.
Here we go. Yeah.
Okay. So I was looking today to find a picture of a live bowhead to show you. And I came across this article from Hackeye magazine of all things. It's from a few years ago. And I'm just this is a very short loop of a live bowhead. And the whale is pretty much completely upside down with the pectoral fins are like little paddles compared to humpbacks, which have the huge long, and it's scratching and rubbing on the bottom. So I don't know if it's true that all whales, but I think whales, they molt and they shed their skin at certain time of the year. And I think that's what this one is doing, is rubbing because of that. Isn't that the coolest thing? So this is the mouth of the whale, is this part here, and its head that was the eye. The eye's right there. So the head basically is a full third of the body. And the mouth is completely closed here while it's rubbing. But, you know, the mouth gapes like a blue whale, you know, with a huge, huge gape. And this is the website for it. If you just Google Hakai magazine, bowhead. Oh, here's a picture of the head of the whale. It's, while I've got you here, I'm going to show you another really cool thing, which coincidentally is from the Hakai magazine. Also, this is a traditional parka made from walrus gut from St. Lawrence Island. And the decorations on there are from the beak and feathers on the crested auklet. This is in the Anchorage Museum. There's a terrific online access to the collections from the Anchorage Museum, and a really good story about the Yupik people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mary, I wanted to ask some really practical questions like source of fresh drinking water and fruits and vegetables and medical facilities.
Okay. So me and John were wondering, I said, what? I wonder what so I believe they had wells for fresh water. And there was some kind of a sewer settling pond, at least at SIVUQAQ. And how they set things up at Gamble, I don't know, because they didn't have the overland utilidors, and you can't bury pipes there because it's permafrost. So some of the small coastal communities in Alaska, they call them washaterias. So they have like a honey bucket, honey wagon, and a central place for water and washing. I don't know what they have at Gamble. Another eye opener is when we were there, it was the middle of summer. It was kind of like here in the summer. It was hot and beautiful, but most of the year, it's not like that. There's incredible snow drifts, no trees or nothing to stop this blowing snow. The pictures of Gamble in the winter are unbelievable because the drifts are as big as the houses, and how they manage with those traditional suburban style houses in that weather, I don't know. Everything comes in by air. All the fresh produce. We did go to the grocery store while we were there. We actually brought our food with us. We were told, you know, don't expect to buy things there. Bring your groceries with you. And that was one of the most tender moments from my experience there, was when we were leaving, we had food left over. And there was a fellow that lived with his elderly mom just across the road from us. And I thought, I'll take our leftover. We had peanut butter and some crackers and spaghetti and stuff like that. I'll take it over to Dean there. I had a box. And oh, he was so grateful and so kind. And he gave me a big hug, took me in, come in, meet my mom. And she gave me a big hug. And I don't think she even spoke English. And yeah, it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, these are people that live on the edge. And nowadays, for medical treatment, if there was anything serious, you'd have to be flown out. There was a nursing station there. And for big things like the boats and motors and the ATVs, like we only saw people running around in ATVs, but in the winter, everybody had, you know, 2.5 or more ATVs in their yard and 3.5 or more bits of snowmobiles. So how they got gas, how they got fuel, how do you pay for it? I mean, very tricky. Like you have to have cash in this world to survive, and how they managed all that, I don't know. Yeah.
You had mentioned the native language. I'm wondering, are they preserving their language on the island?
As far as I could tell, yeah, the kids obviously were taking it at school, and most people seem to be they conversed in Yupik. There's not very many people. I don't know how big the whole group is altogether, but even if it's twice as big as the number of people that live there, or 5 times as big, it's really only a few thousand people. And it's one dialect, although there are Siberian Yup'ik people that are indigenous to Siberia too. Yeah.
That page you showed us in their dictionary or whatever, it seemed to have about 50 words for sea ice.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
There was a companion book that had little illustrations to say, okay, this word is this kind of ice, and this one means this kind of ice. Yeah.
Mary,
Yeah.
do you know how the reindeer have affected the vegetation?
Oh, that's a good question. And I don't know the answer to that. One would think that it would be a significant effect.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think originally they were brought not only for the reindeer are introduced in other parts of Alaska too. We saw thousands of reindeer along the coast further north up by Kotzebue and on the Alaska side. Thousands. They were out down on the beach and everything. And originally they were herded and tended and managed with corrals. And I think that people sold them for meat, but obviously with logistics of transportation nowadays, you can't make any money at that. You can't ranch reindeer in this day and age in Alaska, but they certainly use them for food.
Thanks.
Wow. Well, it's a place like no other. It sounds like it caught a bit of your soul, that island.
It did. You know, I spent quite a few years living in Haida Gwaii. I lived in Queen Charlotte City. And that similarly, I was thinking about similarities and differences with Haida Gwaii and St. Lawrence Island. And St. Lawrence Island is really remote. The only reason that there are still people living there because the culture was evolved to coexist with the marine mammals. They would not be there if they were not at the ice edge, and have a very organized system for living off the marine mammals. And that Haida Gwaii has way more access to resources, and the climate is nowhere near as extreme as up there.
It's very similar to Nunavut with all fly-in communities.
Yeah. 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 And I meant to say too, you guys being kayak centric, the people at SIVUQAQ didn't use kayaks. They used those bigger boats. And I thought that's weird. And then I read somewhere that they couldn't actually stay in the water very long with walrus hide skin, because it would get waterlogged and start to come apart. And I thought, wow, maybe that's why they had to use the bigger boats, and they could maybe make the trip to the west because it was closer, but they couldn't go over water. They would have had to go over ice to get back to the mainland. So really remote. Yeah. Let's see here. It's about 85 kilometers. Anyway, there was a time limit on how long a walrus skin boat would keep together for being in the water.
Wow.
Yeah. Tough. Got to be tough.
Yeah, we're not that tough. Well, thank you very much, Mary. That was amazing presentation. And I also want to just mention again about the shore zone and the other websites that you had there, we'll make sure that that information gets out to people so you can take a peek at some of the video and stills that have been taken there. But I think Fred is primed to say something right about now.
Mary, I really want to thank you for your presentation this evening. I'd never heard of St. Lawrence Island before. I had no idea there was an island that size, just a little south of the Bering Strait. Really informative. You did an excellent job tonight. To show our appreciation, we're going to pass on to you one of our much sought after Siska drinking mugs, and I'll connect with you offline on how to make sure that it gets to your place. I also wanted to mention that when I originally first contacted you and I got a hold of your link for the BC coast, I passed that information on to BC Marine Trails, which I do some volunteer work for.
Yeah.
And the techies there were thrilled.
Good.
And they've passed on a couple of times to me to say thank you, because they're now using some of the zooming techniques and
Yeah.
access to the sites in BC. So in two ways to say thank you. So again, thank you for this evening.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. And for sure, spread the word about the online access. I was playing around and just went back to Haida Gwaii and was flying around Cape St. James just to check that it works. And there, that imagery is posted in several different places. The Coastal and Oceans website, but also there's a data portal with for Salish Sea from UBC. And yeah, so any suggestions you had about, and we'd be happy to even do short webinars on how to access it and what's in there. And
If you could pass on those extra links to Alan and Alan could share them with us, I'd love to have a look at them.
yeah, I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Since I see some of our off-water course people online, I think a webinar might be a great idea once we get ourselves organized there. So thanks for the offer, Mary. So just again, my thanks, and I think everybody is. It's amazing. We've been going on for some time with our annual general meeting and announcements now, but you held our interest because we could see that this was something really special. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank all of you for hanging around through these various meetings. I do appreciate it. We're going to be having our next meeting, of course, a month from now. We'll let you know, and we'll get some of the information Mary shares with us and others out. I believe that Tony's been able to record this whole session, so hopefully we'll be able to post that up on YouTube for those who weren't able to make it. Thank you so much, everybody, and I'll say good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Excellent. Thanks,
Thanks,
Mary.
Norm.
Thanks, Mary.
So Mary, I still see you're hanging in there. You did offer the webinar, and I played around enough to see that I didn't know what I was doing very well. I was learning the hard way, but it would probably be really cool to have someone like yourself who's so familiar with it do a little session just on that. If you're willing to do it at some point, we can organize that in the future.
Yeah, well, and all these things are learning and refreshing for me too, because technology changes, and yeah, it's good to stay current on these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll be in touch. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Alan. Bye.
Good night. Good night, everybody.